Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a few minutes here to see the viewers as they arrive. Happy to have you with us for this hangout. It's a hangout, so I'm going to be a little bit informal, but I'm going to do a lot of the speaking here from a PowerPoint presentation that I put together to talk about lean startups and their impact upon ventures and entrepreneurs in Africa. And we'll wait a little minute and see how many people show up here, and then we'll start together. Hope you all are having a good day. I know that people from different parts of the world are going to be watching this, but for me, it's just in the morning. I'm just getting around, and I'm happy to be with you and to share with you. If you would like, you can over here in the chat box, you can write down your name and where you're from. And this hangout is going to be recorded and will continue to be available right after the broadcast on YouTube. And I'll be circulating among my followers the link to go to that. So if you will, when you come, if you'd like to, just over here in the chat box, write your name and where you're from. Going to give time for a couple of more viewers to arrive. Okay, well, I think it's time to start. Glad to have you with us today. And this Hangout Live is also going to be archived on YouTube, so you can see it later. We're going to be discussing here lean startup principles for African ventures, meaning for African businesses, for African startups, and for entrepreneurs to follow. I am excited about these principles. They mean more to me every time I consult with a new client and begin to see how they can work quicker and cheaper and end up with a product or a service that is meeting the needs of the people and is selling. I'm just very, very excited about these lean startup principles. Well, I want to present with a presentation, so I'm going to go to SlideShare now, and you won't be seeing me, but you'll be seeing the presentation. This is being put on by me, myself, Richard Chowning, the founder and director of Africa Mentor, and I'll mention more about our services at the very end. Now, what we plan on doing today is to talk about the Startup Africa conference that I just attended this past weekend. On the 27th of September in Wilmington, Delaware. It was an exciting conference, and I'll share some of those highlights with you. The keynote speaker for that conference was Ambassador Renee Sanders, and I want to share with you some of her remarks. And then we'll get into the actual principles of lean startups, and I'll give you a few examples along the way. Then at the very end, I'll talk about its impact upon entrepreneurs in Africa and what can happen, should happen, and is happening in many places because people are using these lean startup principles. And then we'll end with a question and answer period. Well, this was a conference that I attended. It was hosted by Startup Africa, which is an organization primarily of Africans of the diaspora who meet together once a year for this conference to network and to share with one another. And it happened in a very great venue at the Sheraton South Hotel in Wilmington. As I said, the keynote speaker was Robin Renee Sanders. She was formerly the ambassador to Nigeria and ECOWAS 2007 to 2010. She was, before that, the ambassador to the Republic of Congo, 2002 to 2005. She had the experience during her time as ambassador to Congo to be dealing with an emergency concerning Ebola, much like the one that is going on now in Liberia and the surrounding countries. She had some important insights to share there. She is still presently the Africa Director at the National Security Council at the White House in Washington, D.C. One of the main things that she said in the beginning was that entrepreneurs need to pay attention to demographics. U.S. businesses need to pay attention to demographics in Africa, both the economic indicators as well as the growth of the middle class. And she highlighted one of the things to really pay attention to is that this conference that took place in Washington, U.S.-Africa Conference, just a month ago, is extremely important to the future of U.S. and Africa relations, and particularly the economic relations, trade relations between them. She said this is the very first time that a sitting American president has invited all African heads of state to Washington for a conference. So that's impactful and that's meaningful. She mentioned that 75 million youth in Africa today are looking for jobs. They're looking for jobs. I wonder what it would look like if they were looking for ways to start their own businesses, how much of an impact that would have upon Africa than merely just looking for jobs. She said the diaspora, those Africans who have left the continent and gone to work or go to school elsewhere in the world, they have a lot of major roles to play in the future of Africa, in business and in conflict resolution and in the health sector. She listed some opportunities that she sees from her perspective as a diplomat, as an advisor to the president, an advisor to many businesses. She sees some particular opportunities in Africa, and I just want to re-mention those. She said one of the prime areas, of course, in Africa for business is agriculture. The majority of Africans living in Africa are farmers, and there's a lot of space for new innovations, not only in how to grow produce and how to prepare the soil, but also the whole agribusiness area. About the distribution channels, how to sell the products, how to irrigate the farms, the whole agribusiness and management. Next is manufacturing. For sure, this is a major play in Africa today that is open. Many countries outside of Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana and South Africa, many of the other countries have very little manufacturing going on in their countries. But there's a great need because they're constantly importing items that they could be making within the country and supplying them for cheaper. She mentions alternative energy, particularly green energy, that in doing with solar power and wind and hydropower, there's a lot of room for new businesses and for people to come from the U.S. and from Europe to partner with Africans and start businesses in that area. She also talked about some areas that I had never considered before. I knew a lot of building was going on in the deep sea ports in Africa, but she mentioned there's a lot of need for services at those ports. She also talked about security at airports. There is space for companies to come in and provide security for passengers and personnel, as well for security in the warehouses where freight is stored. There's a lot of room, from what she says, in those areas. Well, we're going to be talking about lean startup principles, and the reason why I attached that to this conference is the particular panel that I appeared on, which was the second one, was entitled How African Startups Are Using Lean Startup Principles. On that panel with me was the moderator, John Curry. He's the principal and founder of Iterate Ventures. And that word iterate is going to come up later on in this discussion. And it's a very, very important company that he's a part of. He is a scientist as well as an entrepreneur. Also on the panel with me was Tababu Asefa. He is ethnically an Ethiopian. He is a naturalized citizen in the U.S. and now living in the United States. He is the founder and chief storyteller for Blessings Coffee. And he and his company were awarded the Social Entrepreneur of 2014 by Startup Africa at the conclusion of this conference. Tababu is a very energetic man. He came with his whole family, and his young daughter came right up to me by herself, and she says, "I'm the chief creative officer for this company." And I felt honored to be on a panel with these two gentlemen, and because of their experience and what they had to share. Lean startup principles were first introduced by Steve Blank. The first book that he wrote was The 4 Steps to Epiphany. Those 4 steps, we're going to see them again later on here, but they are to build your product or your service on a small scale, to measure the response that you get from that as you show it to a few potential and early adopter customers, and then to learn from the experience with those customers, whether they liked it, what they didn't like, what changes they might suggest. And then the 4th step is to either persevere with this product because it's had a great reception by the clients, or to pivot and make some drastic or small changes, and then begin the cycle all over again to build this new modified or new iteration of the product or service, to measure the response and to learn from it. He co-authored this book, Startup Owner's Manual, which I recommend to everybody. It's rather bulky, more than 600 pages long, but it's full of diagrams, and he takes the time to make the principles very clear. His co-author in this book is Bob Dorff. In 2012, Stephen Blank was called one of the masters of innovation by the Harvard Business Review. This book is available, of course, both in hardback and softback, but there's also a Kindle version. And I hope all of you know, no matter where you're at in the world, you don't necessarily have to have a Kindle. You can download a Kindle app and use it on your computer or on your tablet. These principles are rather simple to understand. They're a little bit more difficult to implement, and we'll talk about that. But the next important book in this describing lean startup principles is the one written by a person who Stephen Blank himself calls his best student that he's ever had, and that's Eric Ries. And his book is succinctly entitled The Lean Startup. And it's a little more friendly than Steve Blank's book, and I would recommend that you get that as well. If you're going to read any business books this year, I would recommend both of these books, and they're both available in Kindle versions. Well, lean startup principles, what are they all about? I'm going to just give a basic overview in this presentation, just to whet your appetite. There's not enough time here to go into great detail with it. I hope it will lead to you looking for more information, buying these books, looking at YouTube videos. There's many of them out there on lean startup principles. And as well, if you would like to contact me, I'd be glad to talk to you further about it. The chief principle in lean startup principles is paying attention to the customers from day one all the way through the history of the enterprise or the business, is focusing upon the customers. I have almost daily, for sure every other day, somebody contacting me and asking me if I can find investors for their new startup. Somebody may call me as well and just begin talking about their startup idea. and I ask them, what do they need from me? And what they will invariably say is, we need money, we need funds, we need investors. That's where a lot of people start. But the fact of the matter is, there's not a huge pool of investors out there just looking for anybody who wants money to be invested in their startup. That's just not the case. Many of the entrepreneurs who come to me and want to talk to me about starting business in Africa will also present me with large business plans, some of them over 100 pages long. This is our plan for our business, and somewhere along the line, either from business professors to things they've read on the internet or advice by other people, they saw it was essential to have a business plan. Well, the fact of the matter is, a business plan is indeed what investors want to see. But the other fact is that if you don't have some kind of track record, some kind of income coming in from your prototype of your service or your product, if you don't have any income coming in, investors are not going to pay very much attention to you. I wonder how many of you have watched Shark Tank. Here in the United States, there's a new program of Shark Tank every week. And you will see there these investors, as entrepreneurs pitch their service or their product to them, one of the very first questions the investors or the sharks will ask is, how much money have you earned? You have to have a track record. And so it's not paying attention to the investors where we can get the money. It's somehow finding out who are the customers who want the type of product that you're thinking about developing, or want the service that you have underway. I don't want to leave the impression either that everything in the lean startup books and in principles has to do with customers. They are the prime focus. We need to pay a lot of attention to them, but it's obvious to you and it's obvious to me. You know your field of interest best. If you're into providing some type of IT service to people, well, you're the coder, or you have some coder who works for you. You know that very technical side of IT. You may know how to service the big computer servers. Well, you know how to do that. Your customers don't know that. You may be providing a service that will use those servers. So it's paying attention to the customers, but of course, you know, your own expertise comes to play in it as well. But when you listen to customers, what are you listening for? Of course, you're listening to their reaction. Some of the things you need to pay attention to is, what is their reaction to the price point that you have on your particular product or service? Is it available easily to them? Were they able to find it easily? Can they go and buy it somewhere? How easy was it for them to download it? Then once they have the product or availing themselves of the service that you have, is it easy for them to operate? Is it understandable? People want quality products, but still today in Africa, price is king. And they will most often buy whatever is the most reasonable price. That's not just in Africa, that's around the world. So we need to pay attention to the customers. Over here on the right side, you'll see the 3 stages that most companies follow in starting a new business. That is, they have an idea, they start a demonstration, then they begin to sell that product. And they sell it through many different channels. Sometimes they get a great reception, then they begin to build. Many times they don't get a reception at all, or they find very few people who want to buy their product or services, and it's unable to sustain a business. And that's why it is the valley of death. But over here in the stages of lean startup, sorry, that was, I guess, a Freudian slip, because the 3 stages of lean startup, as compared to those of a bootstrap, all are centered on the customer. First is customer discovery. What are problems that the segment of the population that you're centering on, what are some of the problems that they have? And then developing solutions that fit that. Secondly, validate with the customer. Okay, then you offer the product to potential customers and clients, and what is the reception that you get from them? Then the scaling is not just building more of the products, but having the customer pool expand by spending your time upon marketing. Here are lean startup principles in brief. And this looks like a very simple diagram. It's because the lean startup principles are indeed themselves rather simple. And again, as I said in the beginning, though, a little bit more difficult in working through them. But the first one, as you can see here, is to have an idea. We can say here as an example, I want to provide prescription medications from the United States to people in Africa. So that's my idea. And so I build what some call a MVP, a minimum viable product, is a prototype of what it is that I'm going to offer, and I begin to market it. So I build that product or service, and I begin to market it to a small pool of potential clients. And I measure their response. How do I measure? Did they buy? Did they not buy? What kind of feedback can I get from them in terms of how good the products were in meeting their particular problems, how easy the products were to use, how easy the service was to understand? Those are all things we collect together. And you learn from that experience. Either it's going to be a happy one, they received it well, you had many people beginning to buy, and they liked it, it was easy to understand, the price didn't seem to be a problem. So you persevere with that, and you continue to scale out now to a larger group of clients. If the experience was not so good, which happens often, there are a lot of failures with the minimum viable product. But that's how you learn. That's the only way you learn. You learn from mistakes. You don't learn an awful lot from success. But for each failure, you're another step on the way towards success in the future. So what you do when you learn that the product was either difficult to understand, the price was too high, it was rather complicated to use, then you pivot and make a new iteration, a new version, a new minimum viable product or minimum viable service, and you go through the same cycle again. Something to realize at this particular stage, there are two financial data that are primary. One is, how much money do you have now on hand? And as your present rate of what it's costing you to build and to offer that to people and to learn from it, how much is that costing you? How much longer will the money that you have last? Those are very, very important things to keep right up on your desk, a spreadsheet, so you know how much you have left to be involved in this cycle and in this process. Because you're going to be conducting, most likely, multiple builds, multiple minimum viable products. As I said before, most entrepreneurs, if they've not been exposed to lean startup principles, they will come to me or they will come to investors with a full-blown marketing plan, a full-blown business model, including extensive financials. This lean startup canvas that you have in front of you right now is what takes the place of a business plan in the lean startup milieu. It's basically 8 different categories with very short responses. That doesn't mean you don't spend a lot of time thinking through each one of these, but you want to put it as succinct as possible, and the answers or the things that you fill into each one of these 8 categories you have before you at a daily basis. If you're a business that already has several employees and you're in an office together, this lean startup canvas should be posted somewhere. Probably that where it can be erased easily because it's going to change often, but where everybody can see it. This lean startup principle, you might want to have one, as I said, that you can erase and change often, or you might want to have keep an archive of all the different versions that you go through as the business begins to develop. So let's just kind of walk through this for a minute. I'm not sure how well you can see these lighter words here, but I'll talk about all of them. The first one is customer segments. What is the segment of the population that you're wanting to center on? It's Africa. Well, Africa is made up of over 50 countries. Okay, so it's Nigeria. Well, Nigeria is the most populated country on the African continent. What state are you talking about? What demographic, men or women? What age group? It may be that you're going to center on the diaspora, Africans who are outside of Africa now. Whatever it is, understand what is right now, anyway, the customer segment that you're going to pay attention to. And realize that within that, there are going to be some who will adopt this new product or service earlier than others. But make yourself a list down here, or a few paragraphs, sentences, bullet points of what are the characteristics of your ideal customer. Then we go to the customers. We either observe them in forums online, we talk to people from that segment on Skype, we visit with them in the streets, we're with them in restaurants, in bars and hotels, and we're listening to what problems are they facing every day, either in their business or in their home, in their individual lives. What are the problems that they have? Listing here the top 3 problems that you hear repeated over and over again. What are some of the existing attempts by other companies, by other entrepreneurs to meet these problems? What alternatives do they have right now? There may not be any. And so they're very, very troubling problems because they see nothing they can resort to solve that. Number 3 is to pin and clearly understand what is your unique value proposition in this whole endeavor. What is it in your experience and your expertise, your company's whole range of partners? What do you have to offer that is unique in solving these problems? What do you have to offer that is different in your company, in you as individuals, you as an entrepreneur? What do you bring to the table that's different than those who run the companies that are presently presenting them with some alternatives? Number 4, then going to the solutions. What are the solutions to these problems? What can you develop to solve the problems that they're having? Can you see already it's not on your idea of what kind of a service or product that you have. It's centered on the customers. We've gone and found the segments that we're interested. We've listened to them. We've figured out already, I'm sorry, I've got to go back here. We figured out already what their problems are. And so now we clarify our unique position to deal with those problems and what are the solutions that we can come up with. Channels here are not the channels so much of distribution at this point, but what are the channels at which we can put these minimum viable products and services? What channels can we use to put them before these potential customer segments that we're looking at? So it's kind of, you know, the marketing channels is what we're talking about here. Number 6, what are the revenue streams? Is it only from that product, or if you're an online business, is there some advertising possibilities? Is there consulting possibilities that are there? What are the revenue streams that you see right now? And then to deal with your whole cost structure, the financials. How much does it take to produce? How much does it cost to produce this product? How much does it cost to deliver it to them? What about customer service afterwards? And what is the cost structure? Then again, what are the key metrics that you can use? And I would say here that everybody needs a CRM, a customer relations management platform. Every entrepreneur, they can keep track of their customer pool that they have here. Those metrics that come out of that, how many times have they opened up emails that you've sent to them? How many times have they purchased from you? What have their comments been like? They're all there under each potential customer's record. So that's basically the lean startup canvas, a very important thing for entrepreneurs. You live with this daily and make changes in that cycle as you learn new information through these key metrics. Then you begin to make the appropriate changes here to the whole canvas until you find something that it definitely is ready to be scaled. What is the impact of this upon African entrepreneurs? I say this, this whole group of principles, lean startup principles, is in its own way a disruptive technology, meaning there are only a few people who think about being entrepreneurs on a big scale. That is, entrepreneurs who are looking to creating a business that will create jobs for more people and new sources of income. Many people will never consider the possibility of being entrepreneurs because they envision it taking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to start a business. But as you can see, what we're talking about here, there is the possibility on a very small budget to build minimum viable products, test them, and make new iterations of those projects. So the impact upon entrepreneurs in Africa is it opens now this new career path for many more Africans. I just don't know how long these 75 million young people, as Ambassador Sanders talked about, will have to wait to be able to find jobs that other people provide for them. But with the minimum amount of funds, they can begin this cycle and to discover and to reiterate products and services that finally they can bring to scale. It costs a lot less to enter. So that is one of the main reasons that I'm excited about it. It will continue to change the face of Africa. It would be well if in even the secondary school curriculum in Africa, these lean startup principles were shared with students. Well, I hope that has been a helpful introduction to these principles for you. I would be happy as well to spend any time talking with any of you. If you would like to get in touch with me, my email will appear at the email address and website and phone number will appear at the bottom of this when it shows up on YouTube, but it's richard@africamentor.com. And my phone number is 903 in the US, so that's +1 903 624 4292. This is Richard Chowning from Africa Mentor, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. If any of you viewers right now have a question, just put it over here in the chat box, and I'll make an attempt to answer it or make a notation and tell you that I'll get to you by email. Okay, well, thank you for this time and you spent together. I look forward to being with you, and I hope to be having a new hangout with some guests within the next month. Have a great day and have a great Africa venture.